What's up, Sterile Processing Universe? My name's Hank Balch. You're tuning in to day 5 of Driving Dirty, a brand new beta test live stream, live stream. It is November 22nd. Is that what this says? Yeah, Friday, November 22nd. It is 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central, and I can't do the math beyond that to the other coast there. So figure it out. But yeah, we are live. Had a terrific lineup of guests already this week, and we're going to be talking to another wonderful guest. Many of y'all know, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, this guy has been out there in the network adding value for many years, many years. And we're going to bring him into the studio in just a second. Before we do, though, if you like this series, or if this is the first in the 5-part series that you've seen, go back to YouTube channel. Might be the easiest way to catch this. You can scroll down on the LinkedIn feed or on the Facebook or even the X feed if you want to go back and check Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and Thursday's release. But I would really love your feedback. We are testing this model, and I'm going to give plenty of time. Like, we're not kind of testing it and saying, okay, we're going to do it again next week. I want to give plenty of time for people to check it out, think about it. Tell me, do you love it? Do you hate it? And then we'll figure out, maybe is this something that we want to look at in 2025 of standardizing another show on the network. Okay. Without further ado, we're going to bring in the man of the hour. Come to stage here, Mark Copeland, or Cope to friends, as he likes to always remind me. Cope, welcome to the show today.
It's good to see you, buddy. And thank you for calling me Cope, because we're friends. And that's what my friends call me. So,
well, I told you off air that I was going to call you Marky Mark, but we're not going to go there. So before we get going here, we're going to do a little intro music to get the blood flowing, get us in the zone, and then we're going to jump in to maybe let's start with the big announcement around Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Chief Movement Officer with Zimmer, and then we'll go from there. But hang with us, and let's just get this music going through our veins, okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I don't think you're ready, but we'll see. Okay, here we go.
I like my suitcase. I like my suitcase. I like my suitcase. I like my suitcase.
Okay.
I like my suitcase.
I have to go to school now. Okay.
You were right. I wasn't ready for that.
So if you're tuning in and you know what that's from, all right, show your cultural relevance and your pop culture in the comment section. I want to know if you know where I pulled that from this morning. Okay, Coach. So you ready for this now? Like, that pumped you up?
I don't know. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea it was coming, and I'm not sure about anything now.
You're still not sure what happened. Okay, well, that's great. That's what I want to get you off kilter a little bit, and then I'm going to hit you with the jabs and the punches, right? Boxing.
You're not playing fair, Balch. You're not playing fair.
All right. Hey there, Dan. Cool. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Tuning in from over the pond over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, good to see you, Dan. Okay. So, yeah, Zimmer made a big announcement recently. I mean, this was within, the past week and a half or so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Right? Yeah.
They announced it a lot of different places, but I saw it obviously through the LinkedIn conversations, and it started some interesting chatter. And different people had different opinions, but, you kind of came in there and said, hey, this is a bold move, and I think it's the right move. And so I kind of want to understand from your perspective why.
Well, I actually think it's brilliant, and I'll explain why in a second. And I don't want people to think I'm a shill for big ortho or not. As a matter of fact, I spend more time kind of making fun of them than I do supporting them. So. So, here's
a bad thing to be a shield for big ortho, though. Like you say that in a bad way, but
it depends on how much money's involved. No,
yeah.
Or how much I have to listen to that song again. Like, and then
I'm bringing it back. Don't bring it up, or it's coming back in.
All right, it's you like smacking me across the head. No, I was just saying. Here's why I think it's brilliant. And I don't throw that term around. Number one, it's bold. And in this space, right? In the big orthopedic, to an extent, med device. But frankly, like NuVasive had Bill Walton and Jerome Bettis years ago doing commercials for them and doing speaking engagements and patient engagement. And I came from an industry a long time ago, pharma, that was doing it long before ortho. Again, whether you like it or not, the reason they do it is it's effective, right? So that's what I would say. But here's what's so interesting about Arnold. And I know I saw you and a couple other people like, man, when's the last time he made a good movie? You know, and I was like, that's a really good point. when is the last time he made a good movie? And I then stopped thinking about it. But that was a good point, right? So, but let's think about him for a second as to why I think he's an excellent spokesperson in this. Because number one, his goal and their goal, I mean, I haven't talked to Zimmer about this, the company Zimmer Biomet, but their goal, I suspect, from readings into it, is not necessarily say, hey, and Arnold standing up there going, you should have the persona IQ put in your name, right? Like, that's not what he's talking about. What they're trying to do is, and I can't stand this term, but I'm going to use it here, raise awareness. Because what Arnold is going to be telling people, I suspect, which I think is a tremendous irony, considering he was in the movie Pumping Iron. Like, that was his first, that's when he hit the world in 1975, whatever it was, right? Pumping Iron. Yeah. This is the ironic turn on it, in that Arnold's going to be up there saying, hey, you know, I was the Terminator. I was unbreakable. I was unbeatable. I was the goal that you put up as Mr. Olympia, right? Like, and people aspired to be like me, to look like me, right? And now I'm just like you guys. Like, I wake up in the morning and it hurts to get out of bed and it hurts to walk. And I can either want to go lift weights or pick up my grandkids or go play pickleball, whatever it is. But all that stuff hurts. And, you know, but I want to still go do those things. And here's the great irony of it is, I think he's going to start, and by the way, Zimmer, if you're not having him do this, here's my, but this one's for free. Which is, hey, I used to say,
free, like, send the bill later.
Yeah. This one's for Bill Hunter out there. No pain, no gain, right? He was one of those guys, no pain, no gain. Here's what I think he's going to be saying. Hey, I'm 70 something years old. I feel like I've beaten myself up. I get out of bed, it hurts. Now I've learned no pain is like no pain. Like, that's okay to want that. And it's not okay to sit there and try to sleep for 2 years, but you can't because your hip hurts so hard. And it's keeping you from doing things you want to go do. And I didn't let something like that stop me. I got a hip, I got a knee, or I got whatever. I know he's had a couple of different things. Like, now he's going to say, you know, I'm actually the T1000 now, right? He's going to, because that's what the guy does. And it'll help him drive his initiatives that he does and his tribe that is, I think they're called, I actually think he has like a group that he talks about eating right and sleeping and working out. And I think it's called Pump Iron. I actually think he may have, so like, it's that, to an extent, that's a subset he's talking to, but he's also talking to people like my parents who went through this and consider it, and their friends are going through it. And they're not looking at him as aspirational, but they know him. And here's the funny thing. People like Arnold, no matter what anybody thinks, because his Q rating positive is still high, which is an objective measure of do people know and like him. It's a marketing term that, and here's the funny thing, like, and I'd forgotten this, so I looked it up. He was in the #1 Super Bowl commercial in 2024, the Like a Good Neighbor, right? Where he couldn't say neighbor. Like, that was this spring. He was flying a helicopter and they kept correcting him, like, neighbor. And he's like, neighbor. It was with Danny DeVito in one of them.
Dude, that's like Mike Tyson on the Netflix thing, like on the promo for the fight. It was like, it's on. And he was trying to say Netflix. He was like, screw it. I'm just going to say it how I say it.
I didn't see that, right? You talk about that. Awesome. That's actually honest. So, dude, like, and I was thinking about, like, you think about Arnold. Like, he was a politician. Nobody likes politicians. Yeah. He was in some bad movies, right? although we can't remember the most recent one,
Yeah.
let's just say Arnie has some off the field issues, pretty well documented. And his dad was an actual Nazi, and yet he's that likable. So do I think? I mean, are you going to bring in Morgan Freeman? Are you going to bring in Bono? Who are you going to bring in to talk globally to an audience?
Right.
Maybe there's better than him, but I can't think of many. And that's
So
why
you
I think
still need to connect the dot, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
some of the conversation, just jump in here, not to derail you, but some of the conversation is, okay, that's great, but who, if he reaches, your parents, for instance, are your parents gonna like go find a surgeon that likes Zimmer, or like how are they gonna say, hey, I saw this movie star and he's talking about like hips and knees, and then what? So like, what is that next step, or what's that strategy that folks are trying to?
So I think what you try to do is you try to get the entire tide to rise. There's 3 million people out there who are sitting around going, I'm not going to go to the doctor. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. My dad, for 2 years, couldn't sleep, needed his left hip done. What made my dad go get his left hip done? He's a golfer. He couldn't get over his left side, started hitting the ball to the right, couldn't control it. He's like, yep, got to go see the doctor. Because that was the inflection point where he's like, this now must be addressed. Not listening to my wife, not all this stuff. Arnold's going to be, to an extent, they're banking on him being an inflection point, saying, don't accept that. Don't live for 2 years and not sleep and be tired and be unhealthy. And so if 3 million people pay attention and 2 million go, you know what, I'm going to call the doctor. Zimmer Biomet's got 40% of the market. Like right there, if they get a hip, they get it sooner. There's 40%, just playing the numbers. I think it's going to drive people sooner. And he may say, oh, and by the way, I got this one, right? And so a subset will say, hey, Dr. Balch, I saw that, and or I was thinking about if I decided finally to come in, and do you use Zimmer? And you're like, no. I don't think they're going to say, well, pardon me, and walk out. But all right. But I think that's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to change in that industry. It changed how pharmaceuticals are prescribed. I don't think it's going to change how hip implants or knee implants necessarily, although I don't know, right? Maybe. I don't think so. But I think it drives more prime hip and knee candidates off the couch into the office and into the funnel sooner. That's what I think. And when Arnold says, hey, I told everybody to ignore the pain. It's the only way to get better. Now he's actually saying, this hurts. I had to get this fixed.
Right.
That's a really interesting conversation to make people think about it. That's why I think it's brilliant. Time will tell, right? Time will tell, and we'll see. We'll see if I'm wrong or not. But that's how I think about it. And if we sit here, Hank, do you think in 10 years, Ryan Reynolds and Jason Kelsey aren't going to be schlepping something like this? Like, you think Ryan Reynolds is going to be pitching,
I mean, he's already pitching all kinds of stuff.
Right. Right. But you're just going to be sitting there going, hey, Cope and Hank, you know how you don't see so well anymore? I'm like, oh, God, yeah. And they're like, you should consider it. Like, I asked my doctor about it. I think that's where it's going because we've already seen it in some other things. So that's just me. And when I'm wrong, you can call me back on here and just taunt me with more of that music.
And 10 years when I got a couple more gray hairs, then we'll bring you back on and like, hey, do you remember this hot track from 2024? So just in case anybody missed this track, this is part of our intro music. I want to play this again so we kind of keep it fresh here, Co, for the rest of the interview, and then we can move on to my next question.
I like my suitcase. I have to go to school now. I like my suitcase. I like my suitcase.
So to tie this in, interestingly enough, that's not Baby Arnold. That is an Eastern European accent. So, we've got some Arnold kind of tie in here, right? Because I think that is important. You're speaking to an American populace and a global populace, though, too, right? Like you mentioned, this is a global ad campaign or, cheap movement campaign. But it is interesting that they, didn't they picked someone with clearly not an American accent, which I think is also it's worth talking about at some point. I'm not qualified probably to talk about it because I've got like the most Southern accent, not even the most American accent, but like you sound a little bit more maybe like Walter Cronkite, you know, kind of clean and polished, but me not so much. So anyway, moving on. But Zach did say, this is Zach from Wednesday's episode. Anybody that missed us, so Zach did kind of agree with you on, you're increasing the size of the pie.
He's the orthopedic outsider.
Yes.
So he actually has an interesting set of eyes, right? Like that's interesting.
Yep.
Thanks, Zach.
All right. So we got other folks here weighing in. Amanda saying, yep, celebrity influencers in healthcare, and she's got like the little side face, like I don't know what to think about that. And we're getting some hellos here from we got Stefan saying, what's up, Cope? And then get some comments here from Chris Jones. He's shouting out Terry Bradshaw. Micro.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. That's cool. So, all right, switching up gears completely. This is kind of a little bit on a lighter topic, but I think I missed the memo. So I'm pretty big into the value of personal branding and the impact of, putting yourself out there, your thoughts out there to engage in the space and impact the space, right? And I missed the memo on whispering because I've been seeing more and more people defining themselves as some manner of a whisperer. So you are the value analysis whisperer. We got instrument whisperers out there. We got surgery whisperers. What's the deal with whispering?
I've been at a couple of whisper meetings,
and
we're addressing this right now.
And everyone's just like, hey.
Well, and I had somebody say it to me 7 or 8 years ago. A surgeon said to me, friend of mine, because I was helping get products approved for him, and he's like, "Dude, you're ortho guy, dude, you're like a value analysis whisperer." Mm-hmm. And it was a takeoff, of course, as far as I know. It was the horse whisperer, right? Like, wasn't that the book and the movie of somebody?
Is that what it's kind of?
I think that was the derivation I assumed.
Okay.
And so I started saying it partly, like, because I don't whisper much. If anything, I'm loud. I'm the loudest whisperer of all time, and ever. And I doubt I had any influence on more and more of those, but I think it's maybe it's popular. Who knows? Like that song, Hank, that's very popular.
I like my
you were playing.
Is that the one you're talking about?
That's the one. Who knows? It may be out of vogue, if it's even in vogue in a year. I don't know. But yeah, I do. I have seen the same thing, and I don't know. Maybe I think people maybe understand it. They all, at least some of them know that. I certainly didn't see that movie. But yeah, my friend told me that, and it stuck for whatever reason. It was sticky. So,
and so we understand. I think the implications of like when someone has that kind of tagline, that you're speaking to. Hey, there's I'm bringing insight to whatever category this is, and I'm whispering into. But let me ask you: it's a choice to run with that, and I'll give you a good example, right? So. Like surprisingly to some people, Hank is not my legal name. That's not the name that my mama gave me. It ain't my middle name. It ain't Henry. Nothing related to it. It was junior high football, and I had a coach that was listening to me. Like when I would come to practice and stuff, I was always singing random Hank Williams songs that I was listening to records. Yep. And so, he just kind of started making fun of me a little bit, the way coaches do, this. And, and he started calling me, I can say like little Hank over there. And like it kind of started sticking with some of my friends. I carried it into college. When I went to college, I had enough friends that were calling me that I just introduced myself as Hank, and then it just no go back from there.
I love it. I love that.
Conscious decision though, right? Like when I introduce myself now, I can decide, do I want to introduce myself as this, or do I want to introduce myself as this? And so when you get into this personal branding conversation, and it's, you're going with a value analysis whisperer, how do you get to that point of, being willing and comfortable and having the plan or the strategy around, I'm going to going to categorize myself, because when you say you're this kind of whisperer,
Well,
at the same time, you're kind of blocking out other stuff that you may not be a whisperer in, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. I remember the first time I put it as my label on something. I was on LinkedIn, I think, and I was grimacing and like, sort of like you do, and you're like, oh God, I'm going to do this. I hope I don't just get torched, right?
Yep.
But I knew people. I've been joking in meetings and with clients and going like, hey, I had somebody call me this a couple years ago. They're like, that's what you are. That's what you so I got a little bit of reinforcement off of where I then, it was the first time I ever posted it and did that, right? And listed myself as that. But did I do it with great confidence? Absolutely not. I did it thinking, well, we're going to see what happens here. Like I can think of 3 fraternity brothers who immediately are going to just come in and make fun of me, right? And
and Hank later on.
Yeah, exactly. And and I don't think we're done. I don't think but
did it accomplish? Like, what did it accomplish?
Yeah.
Right. So you're walking through like that mental process, and that's where I wanted you to go with that. Like, that pulling the trigger to saying, okay, I'm going to publicize this. Yeah. What has it accomplished for how you communicate with network and all that kind of jazz?
Yeah, I hope. Here's what I hope it's done. I hope people realize that. So if Hank's company calls me and says, hey, can you help us with this? Like we don't understand it. We're struggling. That they realize I am not I know what I'm talking about and I can help them. But at the end of the day, it's their story, right? I'm the guy who's helping. I'm the guide, but I'm not the hero. Like, this is not about me. This is about you. So if you hire a consultant or you hire Beyond Clean or you hire the value analysis whisperer, I want you thinking, I'm whispering in your ear, helping you so that you succeed, right? Because if you succeed, that's what I want. And it comes from, I suspect, I don't necessarily deeply psychoanalyze a lot of stuff. But I'm thinking about, like, when I was an assistant coach in hoops, I always had a subset of guys, the big guys, because we were the big boys, right? Mm-hmm. And most head coaches are point guards. Point guards and big guys get along because we sort of like offensive linemen and quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. But I would huddle those folks up, and my big guys, and I'd be talking to them, and we'd have our own language and our own, and I loved that. And it was about them. You could see them get better throughout a season. And that was like, those are my guys. I'm helping them, and it's helping us. And I kind of feel like it's the same methodology here. Like if your company hired me, you get the big win. I want you to win, but I hope that you turn and go, hey, and he helped us. Like, he helped us figure this out. And that brings me great joy. So I think, like, it just seemed to make sense, It's not meant as anything other, and it seemed to stick with people. So, like, if it's sticky and it's what you actually believe, and it gives that sense that it's not about me, that famous Don Miller says, and I'm not a Star Wars person either, but a lot of people are, everybody knows it, like Arnold. Maybe they should hire Mark Hamill, now that I think about it. I want to be Yoda. I want my clients to be Luke Skywalker. They're the hero. They are the hero of the story. And because they have to go out and do this. And it's hard, So does that make sense? Or did I just go way too?
No, that's absolutely, yeah. That's where I wanted to go. Yeah, you went a little metaphysical with Yoda, but we'll forgive you on that.
Sorry. I apologize to everyone for that.
Yeah, but this is really getting at the intersection of this LinkedIn persona. It's come up a couple of times, right? Like, it came up with Zach's interview. Like, he labeled himself the ortho outsider, or maybe somebody else called him that too, right? But like, he's defining himself quickly and I think effectively, so that anybody who happens to see one of his comments or stumbles upon his profile, they don't have to wonder, like, who is this guy and what is he trying to do? And I feel like the same thing with your tag. Can you call it tagline? Like, what do you call that?
Yeah, I guess it would be like a tagline, or it's kind of a nickname, right? But I would say like a tagline.
Yeah. So to my perspective, I feel like these things operate in a number of different ways like that help to facilitate quick networking, quick perceptions to drill down on
Yeah.
those things. Um, in my
Yeah.
own case, I don't know, like
Yeah.
6-7 years ago, I started calling myself a weapon of mass microbial destruction.
I remember the
And
first time I read it.
I can't tell you how many people come in my DMs and they're like, "Hey, I freaking just love that tagline. That's awesome, man."
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, we talk about X, Y, and Z or whatever. But
I probably reached out to you shortly after reading that because I remember reading that, and I remember thinking how clever it was, right? And because I think you also near that time started talking, and I might have the timeline wrong. You started talking about fighting dirty, right? And I was like, oh, that's brilliant because you fight dirty, but you also fight like you. It's so good on so many levels that I remember it was one of the two things I can't remember. I was like, hey, I don't even know you, but I love this, right? Like this is fantastic. And I think we met shortly thereafter, but I remember thinking because it told me what you are, it told me what you value, it told me what you do,
right,
in a nanosecond.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's what you're trying to do, I think.
And you know, going back, like I'm not a huge boxing know-it-all. I'm not like I've been watching clips of like UFC fights and stuff here recently more and more, but like a big part of both of those categories of sports is you got the talk prior to the fight and all the chatter and all the talking back and forth, like the big talk, you know, the fluff, and then you got the fight. And you know, even these guys that have like talked big, gotten knocked out, like they still end up like talking big again the next time. It's just like part of the cycle or whatever. But I think, you know, to tie this into the LinkedIn conversation, the headlines, the taglines, the defining who we are, like a little bit of that is that pre-game talk. Like, who do we want people to think that we are, to know that we are, right? Like, I don't think they're talking big because they think they're going to lose in the boxing fight. Like, they really believe in themselves. But then at the end of the day, you can have any tagline you want. You can call yourself an expert in X, Y, and Z or whatever else. But when it comes to the project or the assignment or the role you just got hired in, if you're not coming out punching, then, you know, folks after that's going to be like, that tagline and that talk is, you're not backing it up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do think there's a component of you reminding yourself of who you either are or aspire yourself to be, right? So like, that's why you can get smoked in a game, a sport, a whatever sales call, and you still are saying it to yourself again before you go do it the next time. Hey, well, this is how I play. This is how I work. This is how I teach. This is and boxing sort of, it seems like, was the first sport, and they were doing it back in the 50s and 60s, where those guys are saying, here's who I am, here's what you're going to get. And part of it, I'm convinced part of it is to remind themselves, I'm holding myself to this standard, and I'm going to tell them. And if I say it out loud, I got to hold myself to it. I do think there's an element of that. You know, it's you know it. We've talked about it. That if you're not insecure and to be humble, you have to keep reminding yourself, hey, I said I'm going to do this. Other people have said I do this. I'm going to say it out loud but I'm nervous about it. But if I say it out loud, it becomes like I have to do it now. Right. And I think it helps hold yourself accountable because you and I were talking about humility earlier. I think it's a key part, but humility also can keep you from saying things like that out loud, right? Yep. And so is that good, bad? I'm convinced most things in the world are neither. It's how we sort of handle them. And it's a great gift to be humble, but sometimes it keeps you from doing certain things. Yes. And like when you calling yourself Hank, right? Like that's interesting. And by the way, I like Hank Williams stuff.
Thanks.
So I thought maybe, do you have any Hank Williams stuff we can play at the end of this?
You know, I should.
As opposed to whatever that
Probably
was.
more copyright to Hank Williams tunes than what I just played.
Yeah.
There's more attorneys backing that one up than maybe the one I just played.
Yeah. And I listened to a great podcast by the LinkedIn algorithm team on, I can't remember if I sent it to you last year.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
And I found it fascinating because they sort of I actually have stickers hanging over my computer to remind me of things they said, because their whole concept is help people get an opportunity, typically economically, and that can mean improve your career, learn something, whatever. But that is the goal of LinkedIn. And every time you put something out there, that's what it should be about. And it's easy to drift from that. It's easy to not. And that's why I have reminders there, because my goal is to help people. And if I help them, it also tends to attract them to me. And so, and
I'm glad you said that.
Right? Isn't it?
That's what I want to say. One more thing about this kind of personal branding thing, then move on to value analysis. But that was the word that was coming to mind. Attraction is something that happens as you decide and as you make kind of that bold move to brand yourself personally, like with a tagline or, whatever kind of function you want to do, but especially on LinkedIn, if you can take that step and say, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, to your point. Another function of that is it attracts people that are also interested in that thing to you naturally. In your case, value analysis. When other people who like value analysis, they're interested in that, they want to nerd out about it, when they see that you've branded yourself in that way, it naturally attracts them. Even if they're not, connected with you, reaching out, they're going to start paying more attention to you than if they just saw, this guy's name is Mark Copeland and this is the company he works for. I know nothing about you at that point, but I know a whole lot about you with those little branding categories we've been talking about. So great point in that. We are about halfway through the 1 hour show here today, and we've had a bunch of comments. Looks like we got some live tuning ins, at least from the LinkedIn side. I don't know if our comments are coming in from YouTube or not, but if you're over on YouTube, give us a shout here. Let us know you're there. So I promised the people value analysis. You are the value analysis whisperer, and we ain't talked a dime about what that actually is. But I'm going to throw you a little curveball here. I know you talk a lot about this. Obviously, you've been on podcasts. You got your own show or two, maybe these days. I don't know. You're all over the place, seems like. And I'm
just trying to get on your show. That's all I'm trying to do is get on your show.
Mission accomplished, brother. You made it the big time.
Yes.
Big time Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, right? That's like the primetime slot.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to throw a curveball here, though, and ask you, what is a topic in value analysis today that you haven't talked about before, or at least maybe you haven't talked about as in depth as you think it should be covered? Like, what's that one thing? Like, everybody wants like the big swings of the bat. Like, how do I get my product through? Like, how do I make the big case for cost savings or whatever? Like, what's that one thing that you want this morning to be like, yeah, guys, but don't forget about this?
Yeah. I that's a really good question, and it's a hard question to answer. But a couple things pop into my mind. Is specifically, I have always felt, and that sterile processing is, aside from its integral role in a billion-dollar high-tech industry called the operating room, and its integral role. I've always thought that there's a massive value opportunity for hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers to do what they have to do, and their reimbursement and all that stuff. And there's an enormous way to, I don't want to say cut costs, because it's not cut costs. It's invest in that and dramatically increase their business, at least 10x. I mean, and I've tried to actually calculate it from time to time, and what I get a lot from people when I talk about sterile processing, oh yeah, listen, they're important, we care about them. I get a lot of orthopedic reps like, oh yeah, I couldn't do it without them, and they're right. All of that's true, right? None of that is inaccurate, but the time and effort and manpower and risk associated with value or with sterile processing is there's an enormous downside risk, and I'm convinced an equal, if not greater, upside gain in sterile processing. You've talked about robots, right? I've seen you put stuff up there in robots, and people laugh about it in lead sterile processing. Oh, that's stupid. I can do it in 12 seconds wrapping. I'm like, not all day long, and not forever, and there ain't many of you. And if you think it's not coming, I would think again. And again, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying it's coming, right? Because and I actually like a point you've made. You have said, and I remember this. You said, like, hey, listen, it's hard to compare this to manufacturing because the raw material that comes in is different every time. Instruments and frankly patients, right? So it's hard. But I think there are a lot of things that apply, but you can't. It is unique. So it's not blanket statement. But I have been convinced that the best run places that I've seen, coincidentally, operating rooms, not all of them, but coincidentally have made a strong investment in their sterile processing department. And it's not just equipment, but it's the right people, it's training the right people. But I have yet to fundamentally be able to describe it in what I think is a replicatable way. And that's what frustrates me, because I know it's there. I can smell it. I can feel it, but I have not been able to describe it in a very effective way, frankly, because sterile processing is complex. And every damn time I'm in the sterile processing department, I learn something new. And I think to myself, yep, had no idea. It's even more complicated. Yep. So, I'm convinced of it. And part of something I want to do in my spare time is try to figure out how to explain this more. And sometimes it's more people. Sometimes it's better training. Sometimes it's more equipment. Sometimes it's thinking like a production facility and stealing good ideas from other places. But that's what bugs me, Hank, is I haven't talked much about it because I don't feel like I can describe it very effectively. But I do know most humans buy because they're afraid of risk as opposed to wanting upside. And I don't like scaring people, but I would say there's not a whole lot of parts in a hospital or ambulatory surgery center that has greater risk associated. And I'm not talking about necessarily injuries, although that is the case.
Yep.
I'm talking about Joint Commission coming in or Department of Health coming in and slowing you down to a trickle because you haven't spent enough time there. And when they see that at other places, I hate to say it, but I think that's more of a driver of investment in sterile processing than what I think is the smart upside. It's they can't afford that $47 million shutdown for 3 weeks or whatever the number, whatever it is. Yeah. But you can tell, I know it's there. I can describe it sort of obliquely, but not very specifically. So I struggle with that. I don't know. I don't know. You have a better sense of it probably than I do because you see it so much more than me.
Well, the risk and the upside is definitely something that I've been paying a lot of attention to in the last 12 years or so once I got into sterile processing leadership. But you're right. One of the most common things I tell people who are coming in this space, either from the outside or even if they're inside and they're trying to scale some of these solutions and ideas, is do not underestimate the complexity of these departments and these problems, because if you do, your solution ain't going to scale. And we see it time and time again. And, going back to this is one of my little hobby horses on the manufacturing, lean improvement, all that kind of stuff that's coming from the Toyotas or the other models. I've made the case. It's we are, we're sending a bunch of jigsaw puzzles up to the OR every case. And there's 6 or 8 different jigsaw puzzles. All the pieces are the exact same color. And then we're mixing up all these little puzzles and we're sending them back down. And oh, by the way, along the way, some of the puzzle edges may chip off and break. They may get lost. There may be hidden, debris or whatever like that kind of belies the puzzle analogy there. But then we're like, hey, put this back together quickly and effectively every time, and we're going to standardize this process with just a chaotic model. It's just
right. And that is an excellent example of why it's hard to apply everything in that Toyota Lean Six Sigma model. You're right. And that's why I think like principles apply, but probably not specifics because of what you just said. And I'm always curious. I live in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Like, I'm always curious, like, hey, they've tried to standardize the cocoa beans they buy, but you can't, right? But it's not as complex, I don't think, as what you just described coming down from the OR. But there are similarities that maybe we learn from, or maybe we say, we're going to have to figure that, or we're going to have to accept this. Like, this is as it is. Right. And we're going to have to accept this and try to make the best of it that we can. But on the flip side, I remember I was visiting an orthopedic, I won't name it, but it's in the Northeast. And a couple of people that run it. And I was touring their facility, and they were showing me the sterile processing because of having been around it for so long. And it's an orthopedic place, and it's a surgeon that basically runs it, but it's part of a bigger system. And I could tell immediately the surgeon, who I've not met, had an appreciation for what sterile processing meant. I don't know about spiritually, I have no idea, but what it meant economically and efficiency. I'm touring with the sterile processing, and I'm like, I know how many rooms they have, and I know how many cases they're doing. I'm looking around, I'm like, wow, how many sonication machines do you guys have? He's like, 7, and we got the 2 wrong ones for the road, so we got 3 more coming. And it was more than any bigger autoclaves, bigger washers. Like, somebody had made an investment to build a 10-lane highway, and they might have only needed 4 at this point, but they planned on growing, and they took that choke point out well before, and they were doing stuff. I was walking around, and I said to the guy around, like, you have a great, he's like, he finished my sentence, he's like, we have a great relationship with the OR. We're part of the OR and they're part of us. And it all comes from our ownership, because they know how important what we do is. And I've seen it, and that's a place that place is never going out of business. That place will always be successful because they realize that whole choke point cycle. I don't know that they have the jigsaw puzzle that you described solved.
Yeah.
Right. But I know this, they're overwhelming it with scale of production capabilities. And it's a great investment, and they are incredibly profitable because they can now do more. So yeah, that's fascinating. So
I would say one of the biggest challenges was scaling those things, like you just mentioned, right? Like, this is a great facility in one location that's servicing one patient population, but how do we duplicate that?
Right.
Even once, not even like multiple times across the whole country. And it goes to, like, part of that reason that I'm arguing is I don't think we know at scale as an industry how bad it really is. Just this morning, I posted an argument for internal benchmarking for errors in our surgical trays, because I get questions all the time. I said, Hank, like, what's the benchmark? What's the national benchmark for errors in trays? Like, holes in wraps, dirty instruments, missing instruments, incomplete trays, whatever. And my response is always, there's not one. And number 2, I always recommend you do internal benchmarking. And, some of this model is going back to what we were just talking about, to gauge where you are today and continually improve the process to drive your error rates down. That is what it is. But the other reason I say we shouldn't even be looking outside this point is because I firmly believe we got way too many errors in general across the country in sterile processing. So you start benchmarking yourself against all these other departments that aren't doing very good either. Why does it matter that we're doing just as bad as everybody else? That's not the goal. That's not what anybody wants for sterile processing. We want to drive that down to as low as we possibly can. And,
you gotta figure out, like, think about you're running a marathon. of which I've not done and never will, by the way. You know?
Me neither. You can probably tell by looking at me, but
yeah. Here's my quick joke. You know how somebody ran a marathon? Don't worry, they'll tell you. But like, you're tracking your own times. You're measuring yourself against you, and then you go run the marathon to measure yourself against others, right? But you don't say, "Hey, we should run a marathon." Well, what are the best people in the world run? What do you run? Hey, dude, how about you get out and start running and track yourself first?
Yep.
And I think, like, that's to your point. If you wait for a national standard, when will it ever be here? But you already have a standard, and it's what you're doing now, and now you want to exceed that. And yeah, that's interesting. And I do think it's also, think about the moving picture that sterile processing has been the past 15 years, especially the past 10, because of procedures moving to new places as well. So, like, just when you had it figured out, the ground shifted underneath you.
Yep.
And so, like, that's it's made it harder to predict the weather and measure the weather. It seems like metaphorical weather of sterile processing, because the landscape has shifted pretty dramatically, and looks like it is still, right? So you're not taking a static measurement of a static picture. But I am just astounded. And I think, like, if you wanted to replicate what that place did, here's how I would replicate it. I would bring the guy that runs it and have him talk to people who run and say, here's what we found. You know, it wouldn't be the people who are in the department, although they'd be incredibly helpful.
Right.
You got to get that guy and say, why did you do this? What did you see? What did you understand? How did you come to this? And when he or she starts rattling it off, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the message that needs to go to the other places. You know, in my opinion, if I had to go sell that, that's how I would do it. Is I would have him, because he's the outlier in that. And then he brought in great people, but I think he's the outlier, that the way you're going to repeat it is trying to repeat what he thinks.
Right.
But that's me. You know, I don't know. I've not been asked to do that. So look at Chris Jones making fun of me for showing up in a hoodie and a ball cap, and I show up in a button-down shirt with my hair fixed.
Looking real fresh.
Listen, sadly, this is about as good looking as I get. I got nothing. This is the best I got.
I know. Well, what's ironic about Chris saying that is I was asking for some hate mail yesterday when they were on, when Chris and Mike were on, and like there were no haters in the comment section, but then the haters show up for you, Cope. The haters love you.
It's all right. I can handle it. I don't know what it is. People love making fun of me, and I'm like, bring it on. I guarantee you. Just be careful if I come back at you. No. So, have we accomplished anything today?
Not in the last 47 minutes, but hopefully within the next 13 minutes, we can accomplish something. Besides playing the PK song twice, that was on my to-do list. So, hopefully
mission
we can
accomplished
in there. Okay, so. I do want to talk a little bit on the practical side. I know that you do help companies today in this value analysis piece. You're bringing your insight, your successes and your failures, right? Because we're learning from what didn't work and trying to scale that out as well. What's changing in the market? Or, what's your pulse on what this value analysis process is going to look like in the next 2-3 years? I want to say 5-10 years, like 2-3 years. That's the rate of change. And I'm really curious if you've thought about the AI implications for some of the submission process, the data process, the justification process. Have you kind of fooled around with any of that?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first question. In the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be more what I would call value analysis, air quotes, because value analysis is really just looking at both the clinical and the economic benefits, if there are, right? And I've had people say, "Hey, man, our business is moving to ASCs and they don't have a value analysis committee." And I'm like, "Yeah, they do. They just don't call themselves the value analysis committee. They're the administrator." The deal, because like we all do it. Hey, like we all do this every single day, and so there's going to be more, and it's going to be expected of industry more, not less. So you have to be able to do it, and if you can't, you're going to struggle in a way that you shouldn't, right? And so We're going to see more of it. It's going to change a little bit more. I think when you deal with these 60 hospital health systems, they are becoming the United States government that seems it's hard to get things done. It's hard to move because so many people have to sign off on them. They only need so. I think that's going to change and become a little bit more regionalized, and HCA sort of does it that way to begin with, because human beings cannot make decisions like that for large groups of people. Committees struggle because the things that go on in Texas are different than the things that go on in Pennsylvania.
Right.
It's just right. So I think we're going to see it swing back, but that's not in the next 2 to 3 years. I think that's 10 years. And I think they're going to demystify the process. If I had one message to value analysis people who do that, I would say, could you please make this more clear? Like, vendors don't have to like it, but at least could you make it clear? They think, oh, we have Lumiere. You're like, that's not, nope, that's not it. That's how we submit. That's not the process. What are you evaluating? But it's on industry. Industry is supposed to be there. We're the ones who are supposed to come with solutions to problems you didn't even know you had or you talked about. But that's what's going to happen. To AI, we've looked at a couple of things, but for me, and I might be wrong, my sense of AI and and I know you actually know much more about this. I listened to you talk about this at ARN in Nashville last year. Is as soon as I feel like some things become reproducible, that's when I'm going to plug it in, because it will then make that easier to do and rely less on me and more on something that's like almost like a chat bot. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. But you can tell I certainly don't have it formulated in my head. And if you have thoughts and suggestions here or somewhere else, I'd love to hear them, because you're ahead of the curve on recognizing and synthesizing all of it, how I put it in place. That's how I'm thinking about it. Yes, I do think about it. Yes, I anticipate a big use of it, but it's hard for me to apply it,
Okay.
Hard.
Have you seen the movie Dune?
No.
Okay.
No.
So have you seen any previews like where that person's like riding the huge worm?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So that's what I feel like I'm doing to AI. It's going wherever it wants. I have no idea where it's heading. I'm not even in front. I am just trying to latch on and hold on for dear life. And if I fall off, I'm going to be in the middle of the desert somewhere where I don't even know where I am.
Yeah, you're riding the wave or you're riding the worm.
Uh-huh.
You figure wherever you end up is probably the cutting edge of it.
Right? Yeah. And it ain't stopping. And it's eating everything in its way. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. We got a comment or a question here from Chris Jones on why value analysis. And I like this question because I asked this about a lot of our guests. You could have specialized in a lot of things, right? You got a lot of experience coming from, the medical device space and just the industries you've been in, distributor wise and whatnot. But you settled on this VA piece. Why?
I like, for whatever reason, I have always liked business cases and analyses. Like if I sat with Hank or Chris Jones and we were sitting there having a beer and I'm like, tell me about your business. What do you do? Where's it come from? Where do your customers come from? How do you do it? What? I'm fascinated. I could sit and listen to you talk about it for hours. Literally, like I'm fascinated by it I don't know why. That's why I like some of the podcasts you guys were talking about, how I built this. It's fascinating. So I just like that stuff. And for some reason I found I was adept at it. And I could sit there and look at a product and go, do you realize like this saves them 2 FTEs a year? And people, reps or VPs, like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I was sort of looking at this and kind of calculated it. And they would say, well, we know it helps people. I'm like, that's kind of vague. That's kind of like Hank and the worm and AI. I don't really know what that means, right? And I'd say, no. I think and I'd be like, how many hours a day? And and you'd start to, and I'm like, oh yeah, you save them. And I used to help people, and we used to sell some products that way. And I found we were good at it. And I think you get attracted to whatever you're good at, and you're probably good at whatever you're attracted to, like those things. So, and I started selling this way. And I found it very effective. And I kept finding that companies would come up with these incredible products, and some of them just airball them, but some of them just struggle to describe them to the business people. And when you do that, like, it opens up. That's what value analysis does. And so I was doing this, and I started interviewing value analysis people. And they're like, yeah, no, this is exactly what we want. This is exactly how we want it. The way you did it is how we want it. And I wasn't standing in meetings presenting, because they don't want you in meetings. But my chancellor, but I would go interview them like you do. Like, you go and just talk to, like, and you get insights, and you have a relationship, and you can bounce things off of them.
Yep.
And I would just bounce stuff off of them. And they're like, no, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, you're missing this. You should have thought. I'm like, I didn't even think of that. Right. And I found out this is all they're doing. So when I turn around and help somebody try to get their product approved, it's not me. It's me just changing the discussion to a different audience so that both audiences, clinical and business, get it. And I have, like, it's like asking me why I'm tall. Like, I don't really know. I just sort of get it, and I'm fascinated by it. And I just, and so, and for whatever reason, and when you're really, if you're apparently good at it and you're fascinated by it, you're humble about it, and help people, well, like, at the end of the day, who doesn't want to help people? But eventually, like, if it takes so much time, you have to ask them to pay you for it, right? But that, I just, it's helpful. And I see these frustrated people, and I see frustrated clinicians, and they demonize the value analysis people, and they're not demons. They're just speaking different languages. And I'm standing there like a Rosetta Stone. I think that's what I kind of end up being. So who knows? Who knows? I just think it's great. I find it fascinating, and I will help anybody as long as it doesn't take too much time. But some of them look at me like, no, that would never work. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Okay.
So we got 3 minutes left here, Cope, and I'm going to try to get through two different angles here, and I'll let you have the last word. The first one, this is just a recommendation that I'm going to throw out there for anybody, and this is my opinion, and if you think it's a great idea, you can agree here. If I was trying to navigate this value analysis piece, and I was already on LinkedIn, priority number one, sit your butt down, go search for everybody who's got a value analysis title in American healthcare, in hospitals, hospital systems, whatever else. Add. Don't pitch slap them, add them. And when you add them, at the same time that you're adding all these people, in parallel, be creating content that's saying exactly what you're talking about. How valuable these value analysis committees are, how hard their job is, how complex it is, how to bridge the gap between, hey, we're trying to bring in real solutions to save real money and real time, and create this organic network so that when you happen to come across that random value analysis person in Minneapolis in 3 months, they actually know who you are. It's common sense, right?
Yeah, it is. And I was nodding vigorously if anybody's listening but not watching.
Oh yeah,
to what you're saying. It takes a little bit of discipline. It takes a little bit of time, but it's like anything. You will look up, and all of a sudden, you have dozens and hundreds and thousands, maybe, of people who are in this community that you can reach out and ask a question. And if you've done it the right way, which is not thought of yourself first, think of others first, like we were theoretically all raised, and help them. So people go, hey, dude, like, what is this thing? You help, right? Somebody value analysis helps you, you help, or ask to help you, you help. Like, it's just, and all of a sudden you look up and you got a big network of people who they're glad to see you. They sort of know who you are. They know you're humble, but you try to help. And man, great things come from that. So absolutely, that's what you've done. Dude.
That's money. Right? Like, if you can come in and they know who you are already, and there's like some level of credibility there, you're not just like, rando out there. Oh man, that's money. Yeah.
Agreed. Well said, buddy. And thank you for everything you've done for me. You helped me with this in many ways that some you know, right? Like, you helped me. And I appreciate it. So I hope I helped you today.
I'm going to give you the last word, and this is a bigger question than just a minute, but I'm going to ask you to try to give me a minute worth of it. Okay. If everybody's doing what you're saying doing, these value analysis committees are going to have way more products and services and everything else than they could ever buy. And everyone's saying, we're going to save you money. We're going to save you time. What's going to be the differentiating factor then?
That's a good problem to have. And they'll be able to make more decisions faster. That's the thing. Like, we're trying to get to them. Think about it this way. If you're a CEO, your job is to make decisions. And your people's job is to bring the problem and the solution and answer your questions and let you make decisions, because that's what your job is. And if you do that, you can spend all day long making decisions. I need to follow up on this before I can make that decision, make this decision, make that one, right? That's what value analysis is, of the prefrontal cortex of all this stuff, of this. And if you come to them and they're like, I didn't know we had this problem. I didn't know it was costing us this much. There is a solution. Have we looked at all of them? Yeah, we're good. Here's what you think we should do. Let's do it. That's what they actually want. They're not getting that right now. They're getting, hey, we have this. We should look at, I'm going to tell you right now, Hank, this is my little subtle sneak. If people call me and say, I can't get my product approved, and they won't make a decision on my product, that's not how good salespeople sell. That means they're thinking about your product and not about the problem you theoretically solve. You want them thinking problem.
Right.
Beyond Clean has this problem, and Copeland's got a solution to it. But how big's the problem? It's costing us money, time, staff, whatever. Now Hank can make a decision. That's what we want to do. And if we did that, they could look at 100 of these a day and make quick, smart decisions. But we don't make it easy for them. So that's it. That's it. Like, that's what we're trying to get to. That's the highest level. So let's inundate.
All right, Mark Copeland, the Value Analysis Whisperer himself. What's the name of your show?
Sutures and Cents. Sutures and Cents can find it on YouTube, and we usually put it on LinkedIn so you can track it if you want there.
Okay. So
just follow me if you want to. If you want more of this, Arnold Schwarzenegger, weird songs from Sweden or wherever that thing was.
Yeah. So we're gonna end.
I like my suitcase. I like my suitcase.
See you, buddy. Thanks.
Bye.